Facebook world, happy Thursday evening to you guys. Hope you're having a good night, a good week, hopefully so far for you. I'm just coming on here real quick, doing what I do, trying to share this somewhere. There we go. Cool. How are you guys doing tonight? It's been just kind of a long week, a busy week. It feels like long, but quick at the same time. Like it's already Friday tomorrow, but seems like a lot has happened in the span of just a few days. So I don't know. Sometimes you just get a little. This whole thing that's going on, you just get burnt out by just what you're seeing every day. I think it's this kind of fatigue, mentally, physically, emotionally, in a lot of ways. It's fatigue because there's just kind of this thing in front of us all the time that we're constantly talking about, and so many of us want to move on and kind of be on the other side of all this, but we know this is still part of our daily lives. This whole pandemic, coronavirus, social distancing, throwing out all these terms here. So just got me kind of I don't know where my head's at tonight. It's a little scatterbrained. So I think we're gonna pray for sure to start tonight, and then dive in, because I want to just stay where the Lord wants us to be, and not get off on any off ramps that we're not supposed to take. So will you guys join me in prayer tonight? Lord, I just I thank you for the gospel shared now. I thank you for this platform here on Facebook, the opportunity to do this. My brother Sergio Allen, who just shared so eloquently, just about sharing the gospel, and just that it is our duty as Christians to do that, and we're called to, and so Lord, I just want to piggyback on that message and just dive into this idea of using our time wisely. And as Christians, what does that mean, especially in these days where we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. We just have today, and we want to use the moments, the hours, the seconds, the minutes that we have for you in a way that honors you and brings you glory, and that people are just pointed to you through that. So through something like this, through other avenues and places that we post and share, and just through regular old ordinary human contact, just talking to people one-on-one, or hopefully in groups once again someday soon, where we're just sharing about your love, Jesus, and just pointing all men, all women to you. I just pray you direct my words, my speech tonight, Lord, that it's honoring to you, that anything that just distracts or keeps us off focus, Lord, that you'd help me just to stay in my lane tonight, and stay where you want me to be, Lord. Let that be your will. We just thank you and we praise you in your name. Amen. So quickly, I've been on here a couple of times with the gospel shared now, just going live, and this is something we've been doing for probably almost a month now. Definitely since some of the coronavirus and stuff started happening, and I think it was really Sergio Allen's heart, the moderator of this group, to start something where we're just sharing about our faith. First week, I think we just really laid out the gospel for a lot of us who spoke, and then the most recent time, we just shared some testimonies and had some awesome, cool testimonies of people just shared on here, and then just tonight, just kind of doing a little bit deeper type of Bible study, and just going into God's Word, and just digging some truths that we hopefully can apply and live out in these days. And as Sergio mentioned to me doing this tonight, and had the opportunity to be free and come on, he asked if I would speak on. He gave me a couple different topics, but the one that really impressed me was just talking about using your time wisely, and so that's the one that I've chosen to look at tonight. And on any of this, I've got a decent amount of material. I don't know if I'm going to cover everything tonight. I tried to have enough to at least go for half an hour or something, and maybe we'll get to all that, maybe we won't. But if you want any of this, I can send it to you, I can post it. If you want take any notes, that feel free. There's a few things I might reference tonight that I might just leave a link for in the comments, and just so you can grab it if you want to look at it on your own. My name's Derek Charles Johnson. I am a recording, I guess I don't like the term recording artist, but I do record music, I do lead worship, and I write blogs and devotionals, and you can find more about that at derekcharlesjohnson.com, DEREK, standard spelling of Charles and standard spelling of Johnson, JOHNSON. And so I think the overall theme, if I could put just a main point for what I would be saying tonight, is that using our time well honors the Lord. Using our time well honors the Lord. And I guess as an introduction for this topic, which is maybe the ironic thing, is when we're talking about using time wisely, that I am a huge time waster. I'm a procrastinator. I am notorious for putting things off, not always getting to an email or a text message right away, maybe taking a few days or even going back a week or two later and being like, man, I didn't even reply to that person, and that was dumb, and just not always using my time wisely in my own life. And so this actually is applicable to myself tonight. Everything that I say is like looking into the mirror and just kind of just giving myself a little sermon here on things that I should be working on. So even as a kid, I can remember going places and knowing we had to get to the car, knowing we had to get out the door, and a lot of times just being the last one out there, last one getting his seatbelt buckled and ready to go, and just thinking of looking back now, how much that probably drove my parents nuts, especially my dad. And Dad, if you watch this now or later, I'm sorry, because I can be that way, and I get it more now because I have a couple of kids that can be that way. So making good use of our time. So the thing that, as I think about this time that we've had now for maybe going on a month and a half, 2 months, I don't know when you actually kind of start looking at when we all kind of stayed home and didn't go out as much. I think for us it was probably right around March 16th or 17th, because that's when where I live, the state of Tennessee, put a kind of started talking about the stay-at-home orders pretty strongly, and it had canceled school, and so our boys were home, and we were all just home for pretty much for the rest of that month, and now through April. Today's the last day of April, and the kids aren't going back to school this school year of 2019-2020. So we are in kind of this extended time, and now things are starting to open up a little bit here, but it is slow and it is cautious. But the thing about this time in quarantine or isolation, however you want to talk about it, I feel like it's really put a finger on the fact that I do have a tendency to waste time, that I've got a lot of open-ended time right now to get things done, and I still choose to do things that don't advance where I'm at, or just use the moments, the opportunities that God has given and shown us to have. So, and I don't know if anybody else can resonate with that. If we're honest, maybe that's something that other people are feeling as well. And I think as I look back over this time, I was talking to a friend the other day about this, just realizing that when this first all started, the first few weeks, you just felt like you just kind of felt like, man, this is how it's gonna be now, and this kind of stinks. Like, this is, I got to give up this thing, and I got to give up this routine, and going to this place, or just little things, but life in general just felt like, just kind of upset and maybe a little despondent over just the way everything had to shut down and just what it became. And instead of like capitalizing on those moments and just realizing right away, like, this is not a time to waste. This is time God's given us. This is time to be together as a family, to grow closer, all those things, that are good. And now, as we're kind of lifting up the bands and the orders, and we're saying you can go back out, I'm looking back and being like, man, I wish I would have spent the time a little bit more wisely. Like, if I had known this was coming, I would have planned a little bit for it. I would have made more of an effort to right off the get go just have kind of a plan from the ground running, to hit the ground running. And unfortunately, we can't. But I was kind of just with a friend the other day, like, we both felt that way. And now, as things are starting to return to normal, it's like, wait, I didn't get done what I wanted to during this time, or what I could have. Potential wasn't reached. So, I'm just looking at my notes here. I apologize, guys. But a side note to all that is just the realization that when we do go through these times, when there's really like a wilderness period, and we see that in the Bible with the Israelites being taken into the desert for 40 years, and they're wandering. And even when Jesus takes moments to withdraw and pray, any of those things, we really see that those are opportunities for closeness, a renewed fellowship with the Lord. Definitely with the Israelites, like, it was a punishment for their unwillingness to go into the promised land, to trust what God was laying before them. And because of that, it was generation wouldn't see the promised land. It would be for their children, and they would wander for these 40 years. But hopefully through that whole time, all of them grew to know the Lord and have faith, and the ones that would inherit the land, that their trust in him would become even greater. And for Jesus, like we see multiple times in the Gospels, where he would withdraw and he would use his time to just reconnect with the Lord and get a vision for what God had for him to do. I believe those times of withdrawing, like this quarantine thing, is good for that. So I just wanted to get into a Bible passage to kind of guide us a little bit with this idea of using time wisely, and then looking at some practical things tonight to say they're not necessarily super spiritual, but they're things that we hopefully can be doing or trying, or at least experimenting with, to help us manage time better. And then also looking at spiritual things to say, these are things that we can be doing in Christ to hopefully be making good use of our time. And if you watched Sergio, or if you have a chance to go back tonight, he talked a lot about this, like being ready, knowing what is going on around us, or not even knowing all that we could see, but being ready and being willing to share our faith. Like, those are all things that we definitely need to be thinking about in these days. And I think God's given us this time to get back into his word, to have more time with him, to hear his heart, to reconnect with him, to put him back at the center of our lives, and then be sent out and be used for his will and his purposes. One passage that I wanted to read tonight, and to me, when I think about things that the Bible says about using our time wisely, there's definitely some things like in Proverbs, where just a verse here or there that just talks about, the fool, or the lazy person, the sluggard, versus the person that, has the opposite characteristics. And I kind of equate wasting time with being lazy, with not really meeting our full potential in the Lord. And so definitely there's a lot in the book of Proverbs. I wanted to go to a parable that is in Luke that for me, it may say a few different things, but one of them definitely is just how to use time, and kind of not being aware of like the urgency of what today is and what tomorrow may bring. It's a parable that they just titled The Parable of the Rich Fool, and it's Luke 12:13 through 21. I'm just going to read it and then just talk about it a little bit. It's starting verse 13. It says, someone in the crowd said to him, this is somebody talking to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." Now here's the parable. He told them the parable saying, "The land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, 'What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops.' And he said, 'I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' Verse 20, but God said to him, 'Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?' So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God." So a lot of things we can kind of take from that, and I want to pull this into this discussion on time and just using time wisely. Really, I think the rich fool is a guy who he probably worked hard. He probably got to a point where he did have riches. He did get all this grain and has land and servants and all this stuff. We don't know if this is a real person or not. We're speculating that it's just somebody that Jesus kind of tells a story about. But he gets to this point where he's like, "Man, I've got so many crops, and it's just plentiful. I've got everything, and so I'm just going to build more barns and store more crops. That's going to be the solution." And from there, I'm just, like he says, I'm going to relax, eat, drink, and be merry. And that's, to me, like if you can talk about time and using time wisely, this is where that guy fails. This is where it falls off, the wheels fall off, because he just says, life's good, and I'm just going to coast from here. And for him, like, that's a complete waste of the time that he has left. He's relying on what he's done. He's relying on the crops that he has. He's saying, I've got plenty of money. I've got all that I need. And God says, this very night your soul is required of you. You're gonna pass on this very night because of this foolish thing that you've done. And that seems stark. That seems kind of harsh. But really, I think God looks at us and says, I've given you this time. I've given you these blessings, these resources. They're yours to be used, not for your own enjoyment, your own fulfillment, just so that you can hit autopilot, but that you can give back and you can bless others through what you've been given. And resources and time are a couple things that we've all been given, that we are able to then give back to the Lord. So, parable of the rich fool, at a verse in James that I wanted to read to you guys. It says, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year here, there, and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that." And that's James 4:13 through 15. Kind of the same concept. It's this idea of, we've got this money, or we've got this whatever. We're gonna trade, make a profit. We're gonna go here. We're gonna go there, and he's saying, James, the writer of this, James, is saying you don't even know what tomorrow's going to bring. You don't know what your life's going to look like tomorrow, and you're just thinking we're going to make all these plans and we're going to be rich, and kind of this same idea. We're going to eat, drink, and be merry. And he's like, instead of doing that, say, what's the Lord's will? We will live and do this or that. We will do according to the Lord. And so I think bringing into this discussion of time once again, it's like, not just making our plans and then being like, reading the Bible and then just going and making our own plans and saying, God, hopefully you just bless what I'm doing over here because this is what I want to do. But saying, what's the Lord's will for my life? How does he want me to spend my time? How does he want me to invest my resources and use it for his glory? And then just a final verse here, Ephesians 5:15-17. You guys, if you've tuned in before or have heard me talk about this is my verse for 2020. And it says, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. And to me, that's just a clear verse saying we must use our time wisely. We must realize that our days are short. The days are evil. This whole thing going on around the world should just be a huge wake-up call for us all to say that we don't know if tomorrow's promised. We don't know. We don't even know if the resources we have, like the rich fool, we don't know if that's going to be enough. We can't just trust in that and be like, well, I've got all this in savings and I've got my house and I got my car. Any of that can just be gone so fast. And so just the importance of just recognizing this, being aware. Jesus talks about in Matthew just being alert, being awake, and not falling asleep. And so I think for a lot of us as Christians, this has definitely been a time to be like, okay, there's a lot more going on here than just some little case of a virus going around. This is potential for a lot of things. And how does that inform our faith? How does that change us? How does that cause us to live differently than maybe we were just a few weeks or even months ago? So to kind of pivot here a little bit and just to talk about using our time, how do we get better at using time wisely? And I don't come at this as any expert. Like I told you guys at the beginning, like I'm a procrastinator. I'm a time waster. This whole time in quarantine has shown me that I can definitely just put things off and not do what I need to be doing. So what I offer is, again, things that I'm trying to do and hopefully will be benefited for you. I think right now, with the media, with social media, Facebook, ironically we're on Facebook tonight, but with all the things that are on our phones and on our devices and on our screens, all the studies about what's going on and just every angle and every opinion, that we can get so drawn into all that it's really a distraction for us. And we can, if you're like me anyway, you can camp out there a lot during your day and go down, every rabbit hole and kind of pursue that out. And for me, I have to step back from that and say, wait a second, are these things that are just distracting me? Are they really informing me? Are they making me a better person? Are they doing anything for my walk with the Lord? Are they helping me be a better witness? No, none of them are doing anything for that. They might make me feel like I have knowledge, but it's just this puffed up, useless knowledge that really, at the end of the day, does not do a whole lot to advance the kingdom. So into that, I say we need to eliminate our distractions. And maybe that means limiting our time on social media, limiting useless, pointless arguments and discussions, because we can all get sucked into them. And maybe a practical way even to do this further is just most of us have phones now that have these screen time calculators, and you can put in there or it'll tell you at the end of the week, like, hey, you spent 10 hours on your phone this week, which is, I'm just throwing out 10 hours. I'm sure that's like a lowball estimate for me. But you can get that, and you could say, well, my goal is maybe to spend 9 hours next week only on my phone, and kind of just keep bringing that number down to where maybe life is a little bit more manageable, because you're seeing like, hey, I'm getting more things done throughout my day. I am interacting with people in a face-to-face manner more than just on a screen and commenting or discussing back and forth. And just how that can I think just open up so much more time to be used in a way that God would honor and bless. And I'm not saying Facebook, I'm not saying social media, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. I'm not saying these are bad things. Obviously, this platform right here, I think the heart and the intent behind it is to just share the gospel, to encourage and equip Christians, and to really just help you give some things to think about during this time, but not to be a distraction. And hopefully that's what a lot of things are right now that the church is offering, and that we're seeing from Christian leaders and teachers, that it's getting us back to where we need to be, using it for that good. And another thing that I wanted to share is just to have daily and weekly planners and action items. So again, getting to practical things, this isn't super spiritual, but every year I find my just kind of cheap, you can see that it's just a cheap Walmart planner. It kind of pocket size almost, and just getting my feel for what the days and what the weeks are going to be. Most of this is my work schedule, and I put that in, but I try to put all my other, dates and appointments in there, and just have that with me a lot of the time, just to kind of keep me focused throughout the day and remember that, I have this going on or that going on. And actually, I have this because I like something that I can touch and feel and write in. But I also have most of that in my phone on a calendar app type of thing. And maybe these are things that you guys are like no-brainers, just already do something like that. I'm just offering that as to say it helps you kind of plan out your life a little bit and get a little bit more of a gauge for what your week's going to look like, what your day's going to look like, what you hope to get done, and getting back to using time wisely, just getting priorities set. The other thing, I'm going to share a link for this because it's just a cool little thing that I do every week, and you guys might think this is all kind of redundant, but I'll go in and just say this is the week starting Monday and going through Sunday, and I'll just put stuff in there day by day that I need to get done. That's a blank one. This one here on this clipboard is more of a current one, and so every day I've got like kind of the action items for the day. If I'm at work, some days I call work and being at home working, just being at home, but I'm blogging and doing music and doing things at home, which is still work. But my job as a artist is work as well. So, but I'll just put all that in my schedule, and then action items to get done, and a lot of things for just what the week needs to be. I'm writing things, so I'm scheduling that out, and I'm just trying to keep up with things. And again, I this isn't super spiritual, but I believe if we're to get kind of into a place where we can hear from the Lord, where we're not distracted, we kind of take care of those things that we can throughout the day and throughout the week, and we also carve into our schedule times where we're meeting with the Lord, and we're just spending time in His Word, and we're praying. So that's most of my practical things. It was just a final point to say, be aware of what balances you perhaps need to create in your life, where you need boundaries. What are you naturally drawn to that you can waste a lot of time doing? Maybe it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just something that you can get sucked into, and then you're just gone for a few hours because that's just a natural draw to you. And how can you kind of create boundaries around that thing? So it's like, again, maybe it's a screen time where I've been doing this for half an hour or an hour or whatever, and now I need to come back to something else, and you just kind of put those reminders in that you can get away and get back to what you need to be doing. We all have those things. I think we all do. I had another note here. Just create boundaries this is a point that that I wanted to make. Create boundaries so good things do not become idols. Okay, so even good things in our lives, even well, Facebook. Facebook isn't inherently bad. It's not really good or evil, but it can become an idol. It can become something that we go on to looking for affirmation, looking for other people's likes or comments on something we posted, or maybe I can comment on somebody's post and have something really insightful to say or witty or whatever, and we can kind of let that feed into our systems where we're kind of getting some feedback from that, and it makes us feel a certain way. And I think when we get to that point where we're looking for something in return from that, it almost becomes something that gets too much of a priority in our lives, and we give it too much ground. I'm guilty of that. I can honestly say. So, hope you guys are tracking with me. Give me a like or a thumbs up or something. Now that I talked about commenting, but just if you're out there and this is making sense, because I'm covering a lot of stuff, and I hope it's coming through. And I hope my connection's good too. I'm back here in a remote part of my house. So switching gears one more time, and then getting into some conclusion stuff. I don't want to keep you guys super long, but just talking about then, if we're looking at the practical ways, thank you guys, of getting ourselves into a position where we're not routinely just wasting hours and moments of the day. We're also looking then at how can we spiritually be aware of what we need to be doing, how you spiritually using our time wisely. And I think we have to recognize that this may seem like a no-brainer, but using time wisely should mean daily time spent in God's word and in prayer. Those are huge things, and I think we need to be doing that. It's maybe something hard to commit to, so I'd say and suggest something that's easy for you to start with, so that you are doing at least something every day. A lot of us have the Bible app on our phones, and that's a great app to just look at the Bible, find passages, things like that. It's also full of devotionals, and some of them are just a few days, some of them are weeks to multiple weeks long, and you can search by content, certain subjects. You can go into that app and basically find tons of different things that may be tailored to what you need to be reading about or just studying. And most of them, I can't vouch for every single devotional and stuff on there, but most of them have a passage to read of scripture and then something to reflect, and a lot of times it's a prayer or something that you can take with you. There's a lot of good content there, and that's, for me, like if I was talking to somebody who's really new to the Bible, a really new Christian, I'd say get that app on your phone and find something there that you can kind of be doing maybe 5-10 minutes a day, and start there. Like get something so you're at least starting in the Word. You're thinking about something that's in the Bible. You're praying, and then just go from there. There's books of the Bible you can pick to read. You can go through a book like James and just kind of dissect what he's talking about, whether it's talking about taming the tongue, because James has a whole part about just our words and how much destruction we can do through what we say. Or James also talks about considering all the trials and all the things that we go through as joy, because and I don't have the passage for it, but James is talking like they're things that are good for us ultimately, because they're showing us that. I'm going to find it, because otherwise I'm going to count it all joy. This is James 1:2. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, perseverance. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. That's James 1:2-4. But just going through a book like that, it's pretty short. It's only about 5 chapters, but just maybe taking a few verses a day and unpacking a little bit of that, seeing how you can apply it to your life, praying through it, maybe having a friend that maybe you can kind of ask questions with, or even read and study with. Maybe you are a journaler. In my handy dandy Bible study, I have a journal with me a lot of the time, where I'll just scribble notes down and things that I feel like maybe God's saying to me, or just even ideas that turn into blogs or devotionals or things at some point. But a lot of times it's stuff for myself, even that I'm just writing down and come back to and read, and I've gone back to journals that I've written 2-3 years ago and read something, and it's just like it refreshes me, because it's like, yeah, God was faithful then, he's faithful now. Maybe a good Bible just to go through, a journaling type of Bible. I have the this is the ESV. You guys can see that it's all backwards, but it's the single column journaling Bible. Pretty sure that's backwards for you guys, but anyway, it's by Crossway. I got that at the beginning of this year. It's really cool because it has all these pages and then just a whole space on the side to jot notes. And what I've been doing, I've been really into highlighting this year, which has been kind of cool, and just going through passages and just marking up God's word. I think that's okay. I don't think that the book is too sacred that we can't interact with it in that way. If you do, I'm sorry, but I believe it's there to mark up. It's there to ask questions, and so I've been doing a lot of that and getting just new insights out of God's word by doing that. So those are just some practical spiritual things with God's word. Another thing I wanted to say about being good with our time is just this idea of rest and Sabbath, and making sure every week you have some time carved out to be just quiet before the Lord, like for a whole day, because that's what the Sabbath is. It's a day of rest. And for most of us, that's usually Sunday, that we're not working, we're going to church, we're maybe with our family, and that's just a good thing. Like, it's good for us. God created that for us to experience, and it helps us make better use of our time, I believe. It actually, the Sabbath is something that helps us rest and recharge and be more prepared for what is to come, what is maybe the next week going to bring. And if we're using our time wisely, I believe we have to make sure we have rest times during our week. And so I don't want to spend a lot of time there. I know I'm kind of going long here, but I'm going to post a blog that I wrote a couple years ago. It's called Learning to Rest. It's got a few points just about the Sabbath, and I won't draw that out all now. The one last point I just kind of want to make, as far as just our spiritual best use of our time, I'm not going to read the whole passage, but it's Matthew 25:14-30. This is called the parable of the talents. If you guys remember, there's the master that comes to the servants and basically gives them something, a talent. He gives them a certain amount to take and invest. And he's going to go off on a journey. The first guy gets 5 talents, the next guy gets 2, and the last gets 1. So 3 different servants, they all get a certain amount, and they're told to go and do something with that to really increase what they've been given, like get a return on that investment that he's put into them. The big thing with this parable that I believe applies to us is that God is investing into each one of us, you and I, the ability to give something back to him. And part of that is really just how we use our time, how we use the moments, the days and minutes that we've been given by the Lord, to give it back to him, and to not just waste it. You know, the last servant in that passage, he gets the 1 talent from the master. He doesn't know what to do with it, or he really just kind of sits on it and buries it. And when he comes back, the master says, how come you still have just 1 talent? And he, got this excuse that, you're a hard man, and I know. He just kind of makes this excuse for himself. But above all, it's because he was lazy. He didn't do anything with the time, with the talents he's been given, with really the giftings he has. And when we waste our time, we waste our gifts. We really just kind of squander that thing that we've been given. And I think a way to shift our thinking about that is just to realize that God gives you talents, He gives you opportunities, but He's not giving that to you for the sole benefit of you. He's using that through you to build His kingdom, that He wants you to apply that gift that you've been given in order to lead others to Christ, in order to point others to Him. And so that's a big convicting thing about just the use of our time and what we've been given. And I could go on because I love that that discussion, and I love that parable, because I think each one of us as Christians, we're given this one life. We're given the innate abilities and the giftings that we have, the way that our brains are wired. And some of us are wired to do certain things. Some of us are more mathematical or scientific, and some are more creative and artistic, and just all the different things that He's blessed people within the body of Christ. And that all these giftings come together, and they're all used for His glory, and they're all used to build His kingdom. And really, when one person kind of hoards that gift or says, I'm not going to do anything with it, it holds everything back, because that potential is not being used. So just the idea behind that is not to waste the time you have, not to waste the opportunities that God would give you. I want to finish up, because I know I'm going pretty long here, and I just am throwing a lot of stuff out. But I really, as we kind of wind down, I just think that the whole time that we're in right now really gives us a great time to think about how we are using our days, how we are using our moments. Even with my kids, like, how am I using the time to connect with each one of them? I have 4 boys and a girl, but all my boys are 5 and up. My daughter is only about 9 months old. But how, with each one of my boys, can I use this time to invest into their lives, to speak truth into them? Because we may never get this time back, something like this again. But how can I not waste the moments that I have with them to point them to Jesus, to talk about what's going on in the world, and hopefully say, yeah, there's all this bad stuff, but God's still in control, and He has a point, He has a purpose behind all this. And just use this to really set them up for success spiritually, that they can look back at this time, because I think we're all going to look back as a very watershed moment in our lives of this whole thing, and that they can look back with a fondness to be like, yeah, I know our family grew tighter during that time. I knew that Mom and Dad loved me. I knew that they were displaying Christ. Maybe every day wasn't perfect, and I'll be honest with you, a lot of days are not perfect, because we're all together a lot and we're at home. But there's a lot of grace that we can show each other through that, and a lot of just continuing to point to Christ and continuing to say, hey, I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, but Jesus is. And I say all that just to say, this is a time in our lives right now, this moment in history, to really just center in and focus in on Christ, and just have Him speak into our lives, like, continually, because He's always saying something. I had more I wanted to say, but I want to just kind of close it up with that, and just to come back to that idea that I mentioned at the beginning, that when we use our time well, we honor the Lord, in that He's glorified by the fact that we get up every day, and we're intentional about being in His Word. We're intentional about praying. We're intentional about just being a witness to Him in our jobs and in the home, and when we're out in the community, that He's glorified through all that. And we're thinking about that. We're not just kind of reading the Bible and putting it back on the shelf and then just going back to life as normal, that we're incorporating His Word into our daily lives, that we're living it out, we're walking it out, we're the hands and feet of Jesus Christ as we're going about our day. So I just want to close in prayer, and if you guys have questions at all, you can leave comments. You can email me, info@DerekCharlesJohnson.com. But I want to pray for 3 different things: for our nation, for our churches, and for our homes. If you guys don't mind, I am going to probably have this in front of me, and because I didn't memorize it. I'm just going to pray with my eyes open, reading from the sheet, because this is something I kind of prepared ahead of time. But again, reach out if you have questions about any of this. I do feel like we're in a time where everything needs to be reevaluated, where we need to take stock of where our lives are in Jesus Christ and be intentional about the gospel, that these are not moments to waste, but these are moments to capitalize on, and be as bold as lions. That's one of my favorite verses from the Bible. The righteous are as bold as a lion, and we have boldness. We have His Spirit living inside of us. We have the same boldness, the same Spirit that the disciples had in the New Testament as they took Jesus's example and they went out and they preached, they delivered people, they healed people, they shared the good news. That same Spirit that rested upon them, that came down at Pentecost, that Spirit is upon us if we are in Christ, and we just need to walk it out. So I'm going to pray. Thank you guys so much for tonight. Lord, I just ask for our nation tonight, God, for you to protect us, that we would continue to see coronavirus cases go down, and that over time there'd be less and less impact from this thing all over the country, and that we'd allow the country to open up more, that fears would begin to subside, that fear that has just gripped us, Lord, and even in the church, that you would break that fear, and that routines would get back to normal, that you would just bless jobs and workplaces, environments, homes, Lord. Just be with people as they go back to work, and the economy, Lord. We pray that you would just have your hand over everything, our leaders, our government, from the president all the way down to state and local officials, Lord. Just help them to make wise decisions and good decisions, Lord. We pray for our churches, that the church would pick up the mantle in the aftermath of all this, Lord. We've seen the answer really isn't more government, more legislation, more rules. The answer is plain and simple, that we need Jesus. And Lord, help us to minister to those who are broken. We know a lot of people coming out of this are going to be just still broken, still afraid, wondering why, having lots of questions. And if we can step in as a church to say, you need to know this man, who is the Son of God, who wasn't just a man, but he is God in human flesh. You need to know him. His name is Jesus. He can speak into your life at this moment in your brokenness and heal you. Help us as a church to do that, Lord. And for our homes, for moms and dads and kids to grow in love and in trust for one another, for this time to continue to be a time where we lay aside ourselves and we can see how we can love and minister to the ones who are closest to us. For Jesus, you to be at the center of our homes, and for your will to prevail in our lives. We thank you. We ask all this in your name. Amen. Guys, thank you again so much. I'm sorry for going so long tonight, but I hope it's a blessing and useful to you. Let us just be aware of the days that we have, and to use our time as best as we can for God's for his glory, for him to just be known throughout all of this. And thank you so much. You guys have a good night. God bless.